Relax, Ray. I just made your useless strip of land valuable. That was what my neighbor Derek Caldwell said after building an 8-foot cedar fence 18 feet inside my property. He cut my father's cedar trees. He ripped out my survey stakes. Then he listed my land as part of his expanded private backyard. But Derek forgot something. A fence can fool a buyer. It cannot fool a survey. By Friday morning, his buyer, his realtor, the sheriff, a county records officer, and a licensed surveyor were standing in his yard, watching orange stakes prove that his $80,000 upgrade was built on land he did not own. So before you pick a side, ask yourself this: would you tear the fence down yourself, or let the survey stakes destroy his sale? My name is Raymond Porter. Most people call me Ray. I am 64 years old, and I have lived in the same house on Briar Hollow Lane since I was 8. The house is not fancy. Old brick. A sloping roof, a detached garage, and a backyard that looks ordinary, until you understand what it means to me. My father bought that property in 1969. When I was 15, he planted a row of cedar trees near the back property line. Not on the line, a few feet inside it. He said trees were for shade, privacy, and memory, not for legal boundaries. The real boundary was marked by survey pins and old stakes from a county survey. He kept the deed, the plat map, the survey report, and every property record in a metal cabinet in the garage. Most boys inherit baseball gloves or fishing rods. I inherited a filing system. Later, I inherited the house, and I inherited my father's trade. I became a fence contractor. For 35 years, I built fences for farms, backyards, schools, warehouses, and stubborn neighbors who thought a tape measure was a legal document. I learned one lesson early. Most fence disputes do not start with wood or wire. They start with pride. Someone thinks the line should be where it feels convenient. Someone thinks if grass has been mowed long enough, ownership has magically changed. Someone thinks an old man will not fight over a strip of land because it looks small from a distance. Derek Caldwell was that kind of man. He moved in next door in late spring. The house beside mine had belonged to the Harpers. They were a retired couple who knew exactly where the line was. Mr. Harper and my father had walked it together more than once. When the Harpers moved to Florida, Derek bought the place. But he did not buy it like a man looking for a home. He bought it like a man looking for profit. Within 2 weeks, contractor trucks were in the driveway. A dumpster sat in the front yard, and a realtor's sign leaned against the garage before the first coat of paint had dried. Derek was not moving in. He was flipping it. New windows, new stone veneer, new landscaping, new patio pavers, new outdoor lighting. He talked about curb appeal like it was a religion. The first time we met, I was in my backyard repairing the hinge on my old garden gate. Derek walked over wearing white sneakers, pressed shorts, and sunglasses so reflective, I could see my own tired face in them. "You, Ray?" he asked. "That depends," I said. He gave me a quick smile. "Derek Caldwell. I bought the Harper place." I figured. He looked across my yard. Not at me, at the yard. His eyes moved over the old shed, the cedar row, the vegetable beds, and the strip of grass between the trees and the old boundary markers. "You have a lot of unused space back here," he said. That was the first red flag. I wiped my hands on a rag. "Unused by who?" He laughed, like I had made a joke. "I mean visually. The yards back here don't flow well. I'm putting in a privacy fence. Straight line, clean, modern. It'll help both properties." "No, it won't." His smile paused. "I haven't even shown you the plan. You just did." He glanced toward the cedar row. "I'm talking about following the natural boundary. That cedar row is not the property line. It's close enough." I looked at him. "Close enough is how people end up in court." He tilted his head. "You always this difficult? Only before someone builds on my land. That should have been the end of it. For most reasonable people, that would have been the moment to check records, or call a surveyor, or at least ask one honest question." Derek did none of those things. Instead, he started talking to neighbors. He told people I was protective, then difficult, then uncooperative, then one of those old guys who thinks the whole neighborhood still belongs to him. He used the same words I had heard from customers for decades: property values, neighborhood appearance, modern privacy, clean boundary, safety, curb appeal. Those words sound harmless, but in the mouth of a man trying to take something, they become tools. One afternoon, I saw a photographer in Derek's backyard. He was taking pictures toward the cedar row. The angle made the strip of land behind the trees look like part of Derek's yard. Derek stood beside him, pointing. I walked over to my side of the yard. "What are you photographing?" I asked. Derek smiled. "Marketing." For what? For the listing. Once the fence is in, this backyard is going to look twice as private. I looked at the photographer, then back at Derek. The fence better be on your side. Derek's smile thinned. Ray, you need to stop acting like every inch of grass is sacred. It is if it's mine. He laughed. You know, lines get fuzzy over time. No, I said. People get fuzzy. Lines stay where the survey put them. He looked away first. A few days later, I found small pink contractor flags in my grass. Not on Derek's side, on mine. They ran from the back corner of his patio straight through my cedar row. They cut across my yard like someone had drawn a line with no regard for reality. I pulled one out and walked next door. A fence contractor was unloading string line and marking paint. He was a young guy, maybe 30. He wore a company shirt and had the tired look of a man who already knew the customer was trouble. Who marked this line? I asked. He pointed toward Derek's house. Mr. Caldwell. It's wrong. He shrugged. I just install what the customer approves. That line is 18 feet wrong. He looked uncomfortable. I'd take that up with him. Derek came out of the house before I could answer. Problem? He asked. Yes, I said. Your fence flags are on my property. He folded his arms. We're following the established backyard line. No, you're following the line you want. He smiled at the contractor. Ray and I have a difference of opinion. No, I said. We have a deed, a plat map, and a survey. Derek looked at the contractor again, as if I were embarrassing myself. Old paperwork doesn't always reflect current use. That was the second red flag. Current use. That phrase usually means someone has been mowing the wrong grass long enough to convince himself the mower changed the deed. I said, Derek, I built fences for 35 years. I'm telling you now, do not build on that line. He lowered his voice. And I'm telling you now, don't interfere with my contractors. I looked at the flags, then at the cedar trees, then at Derek. You're about to build a very expensive mistake. He smiled. We'll see. The next afternoon, Derek waved a printed permit at me from across the yard. Approved, he said. So we're done arguing. I walked over and looked at the paper. It was a basic fence permit. It allowed a fence to be built. It did not certify the boundary. It did not transfer property. And it definitely did not let him choose 18 feet of my yard. That permit lets you build a fence, I said. It does not let you pick my property line. Derek tapped the paper with 2 fingers. The city approved it. They approved a fence, not theft. His smile turned cold. That sounds like your interpretation. No, I said. That is what permits are. He folded the paper and slid it into his back pocket. You're going to look very foolish when this is finished. I looked at the pink flags in my grass. So will the fence. That night, he sent an email to several neighbors. Carol from across the street forwarded it to me because she said it felt wrong. The subject line was, Boundary Improvement Concern. Derek wrote that I was refusing to cooperate with a reasonable privacy upgrade. He said my confusion over old boundary assumptions was delaying improvements that would benefit the neighborhood. He said the existing yard layout was outdated. He said the cedar row created visual disorder. He said my objections were personal, not legal. Then he added one sentence that made my jaw tighten. Mr. Porter verbally agreed this line made sense, but now appears to be changing his position. That was a lie. I had agreed to nothing. But it was a smart lie. Smart enough to make the neighbors wonder. Smart enough to make a contractor feel protected. Smart enough to make a buyer believe the fence issue was already settled. Men like Derek do that. They create a fake agreement. Then they accuse you of breaking it. I could have replied to the whole email chain. I could have attached the survey. I could have embarrassed him right there. But I had learned something in 35 years of building fences. Never interrupt a man while he is creating your evidence. So I printed the email. I put it in the folder. And I waited. Derek thought he had created proof against me. What he had really created was the first page of the file that would ruin his sale. 2 mornings later, I had to drive 40 minutes to take my sister to a medical appointment. When I left, the pink flags were still in the grass. When I came back, the fence was there. 8 feet tall, fresh cedar, perfectly straight, and completely wrong. It ran deep through my property. It cut off the cedar row, my old compost area, and the back strip my father had always kept open for drainage. The fence did not just touch my land, it swallowed it. There were tire tracks in my grass, sawdust near the trees. One of my cedar trees had been cut down to the stump. 2 more were damaged. Their lower branches had been hacked away to make room for the panels, and the old orange survey stakes near the back corner were gone. I stood there for a long moment, not moving, not speaking, just looking. Then Derek stepped out from behind the new fence with a cup of coffee in his hand. He looked pleased with himself. "Relax, Ray," he said. "I just made your useless strip of land valuable." I walked toward the fence. Slowly. I looked at the post holes, the concrete, the fresh boards, the cut cedar stump. Then I looked at Derek. "No," I said. "You just put a price tag on evidence." His smile faded. "You touch this fence, I'll call the sheriff." "I'm not touching it." "Good. I want it removed legally." He laughed. "Legally? Ray, it's a fence." "No," I said. "It's a property line dispute you built out of cedar." He set his coffee on the fence rail. "You're confused. That old tree line has always been the boundary. Trees are not a deed. Neither is your memory." That one landed. Not because he hurt my feelings. Because he meant to. He wanted me angry. He wanted me to grab a pry bar, break a panel, cut a post, and do something he could photograph. Something he could call destruction. I did not give him that. Instead, I looked up at the little trail camera mounted on the corner of my shed. I had put it there years ago to catch raccoons getting into my tomatoes. That morning, it had caught something better. Derek followed my eyes. For the first time, his face changed. He had talked to the neighbors. He had talked to the contractor. He had even called the sheriff first, but he had forgotten to talk to the camera. I said, "Smile. You're on my side of the fence." He turned away. 10 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser pulled up. Derek had called before I did. That did not surprise me. People like Derek love being the first voice in the record. Deputy Mark Ellis stepped out of the car. I had known Mark for years. Not closely, but enough to nod at the hardware store. Derek hurried toward him. "Deputy, thank you. My neighbor is threatening to tear down my fence." Mark looked at the fence. Then at me. "Ray, with Deputy." Derek blinked. "You know him?" Mark ignored that. "What's going on?" Derek launched into a polished version of events. He said he installed a fence on the established boundary. He said I had verbally agreed the old cedar row made sense. He said I changed my mind after the work was done. He said I had become aggressive. He said the fence improved privacy and safety. He said the permit had been approved. And he said I was trying to interfere with a permitted improvement. He used the word safety 3 times. People like Derek always reach for safety when ownership gets inconvenient. When he finished, Mark turned to me. "Ray?" I pointed at the ground. "I'd like the report to show the fence was installed while I was away. Tire tracks and post holes are on my property. At least one cedar tree was cut. The original survey stakes were removed before I arrived, and I have not touched the fence." Derek scoffed. "Here we go with the old stakes again." Mark looked toward the missing corner. "Where were they?" I pointed. "There, and there," Derek said. "Those were rotten markers." "Not official," I said. "You don't get to decide that after removing them." Mark looked at Derek. "Did you remove markers?" Derek raised both hands. "My contractors cleared debris. Did you tell them to?" Derek paused. "I told them to prepare the line." Mark wrote that down. Derek did not like that. "This is civil, right?" "Property line stuff is civil." Mark looked at him. "Sometimes, removing markers and cutting trees on someone else's property can create a record." Derek's mouth tightened. I said, "I want this handled with a survey and a report. I am not removing anything myself." Mark nodded. "That is the smartest thing anyone has said today." Derek looked irritated. "The fence stays until he proves otherwise." I said, "I already can." Derek smiled. "Then prove it." So I did what my father taught me. I opened the file. In my garage against the back wall was my father's old metal cabinet, the same one he had used for decades. It was gray, dented, and heavier than it needed to be. The drawers were labeled in black marker. Taxes, house, cedar row, fence, survey. I opened the survey drawer. The smell of old paper came out first. Dust, ink, dry cardboard, memory. Inside were the original deed, the county plat map, the 1984 survey report, photos of my father standing near the cedar row, receipts from the nursery where he bought the trees, and a copy of a previous fence permit from the Harper property. I spread everything across my workbench. The line was clear. Derek's new fence was not on the boundary. It was 18 feet inside my parcel, 18 feet wide, about 230 feet long, more than 4,000 square feet. That might not sound like much to a man looking at it from a car, but ask any surveyor, ask any title company, ask any buyer, ask any homeowner whose neighbor just swallowed the backstrip of his land. Land does not become small because someone else wants it to. Then I remembered the photographer. Marketing. I opened my laptop and searched Derek's address. The listing came up immediately. New photos. New patio. New landscaping. New privacy fence. And there it was. Expanded private backyard with new 8-foot cedar privacy fence. I read the sentence twice. Expanded private backyard. That was my land in his listing. Not just implied, not accidental. Advertised. I kept scrolling. The photos were angled to make the backyard look much larger than it was. The fence formed a clean rectangle. The cut cedar row was gone from the frame. My strip of land had been turned into his selling point. That fence was not just a fence anymore. It was part of his sale price. That was when the phone rang. It was a woman named Melissa Grant from the title company handling Derek's pending sale. "Mr. Porter," she said carefully, "I understand there may be a boundary concern involving the Caldwell property." "There is not a concern," I said. "There is a fence on my land." A pause. "Do you have documentation?" "Yes." "Is the property currently under dispute?" "It will be as soon as I finish sending you the survey." Another pause. Then she said, "Please send everything you have." By evening, I had sent copies to the sheriff's office, the title company, and the county land records office. The deed, the plat map, the old survey. Photos of the original stakes, trail camera footage, photos of the original stakes, the contractor flags, the fence permit, the listing language, and Derek's email claiming I had verbally agreed to a line I had rejected from the beginning. The next morning, I called Mason Bell. Mason was a licensed surveyor. He had known my father. He was the kind of man who could stare at a plat map for 30 seconds and tell you which corner of the county had caused the most arguments. When he arrived, he did not say much. Good surveyors rarely do at first. They look, they measure, they check. They let the land embarrass whoever lied about it. Mason walked the back line with his equipment. He checked the old pins. He compared the plat. He marked the disturbed soil where the stakes had been removed. Then he stood near Derek's new fence and shook his head. "How far?" I asked. 18 feet at the north corner, Mason said. 17.5 near the middle. Back to 18 at the south end. Entire fence? Entire fence. I looked at the cedar boards. Mason added, "Don't remove it yourself." "I know. I mean it, Ray. He's going to want you to touch it." "Don't. I won't." Mason looked toward Derek's house. "This is not a mistake." "No," I said. "It's a listing photo." Mason glanced at me. I handed him a printed copy of the realtor listing. He read the line about the expanded private backyard. His eyebrows rose. "Well," he said, "that was stupid." By Friday, this was no longer just a fence dispute. The buyer's inspection was scheduled. The title company had flagged the boundary. The sheriff's office had a report, and Mason had agreed to restake the line in front of witnesses. The title company did not care about Derek's confidence. They cared about clean boundaries. Once they saw my survey documents and the listing language, they requested verification before the buyer inspection moved forward. That was why the sheriff, the county records officer, and Mason Bell were all there on Friday. Derek thought Friday was going to sell his house. He did not know Friday was going to expose the backyard he had stolen. Derek opened his backyard gate for the buyer inspection looking confident. Too confident. His realtor was there, wearing a bright blazer and a nervous smile. The buyers were a couple in their 40s. They had a young daughter who kept running her hand along the new cedar fence. Derek was giving them the tour. "This fence really transformed the property," he said. "Total privacy. Expanded yard. Much cleaner line." The buyer looked around. "So the yard goes all the way to this fence?" Derek said. "Yes. This has been the understood boundary for years." That was when I stepped out from my side. "Understood by who?" Derek turned. His smile vanished. "Ray, this is not the time." "I agree," I said. "You should have checked before the listing went live." The realtor went pale. The buyer looked from Derek to me. "Is there a boundary issue?" Derek forced a laugh. "No. Neighbor misunderstanding." I held up the folder. "Then you won't mind the surveyor." Derek's eyes moved past me. Sheriff Dalton's cruiser was pulling up. Behind it was Mason Bell's survey truck. Then came the county vehicle. The buyer's daughter stopped touching the fence. Derek walked toward the sheriff quickly. "Sheriff, this is a private civil matter. He is interfering with my sale." Sheriff Dalton removed his sunglasses. It became more than a conversation when survey markers were removed, and a structure was built across a disputed line. Derek pointed at me. "He is trying to sabotage my transaction." Ms. Alvarez stepped forward with a folder. She worked with the county land records office. She was not there to decide a lawsuit. She was there to verify what the county records showed. "Mr. Caldwell," she said. "The title company requested boundary confirmation after receiving Mr. Porter's survey documents. We are here to verify the recorded parcel line and document the records." Derek looked at his realtor. She looked away. That was the first crack. Mason did not waste time. He opened the county plat map on the hood of his truck. Then he started walking the line. Every few feet, he stopped, measured, checked, marked. Then he drove a bright orange stake into the ground. The first stake landed 18 feet on Derek's side of the new fence. The second did too. Then the third. Then the fourth. With each hammer strike, the lie became more visible. The fence stood behind the true line, like a confession made of cedar. The buyer whispered something to his wife. Derek's face tightened. "Those are just stakes," he said. I looked at him. "That's the first true thing you've said. Stakes don't own land. They show where the deed already does." Mason kept working. When he finished, he stood near the back corner. "The fence is not on the property boundary," he said. "It is inside Mr. Porter's parcel." Derek shook his head. "That can't be right." Mason looked at the equipment. "It is." Ms. Alvarez checked the deed and plat map. "The recorded parcel matches Mr. Porter's survey file," she said. "This strip is part of the Porter property." The buyer turned to Derek. "You said this was your yard," Derek stammered. "It has always functioned that way." I said, "No, Derek, you just photographed it that way." The realtor closed her eyes. Then the evidence started landing. First, the deed. Miss Alvarez confirmed the record. Then the plat map. Mason showed the true boundary. Then the old survey. It matched. Then the trail camera footage. Deputy Ellis had still frames printed. They showed Derek's contractor crew pulling the old orange stakes and stacking them near the ditch. Derek said, "They were clearing debris." One of the contractors stood near the driveway. He shook his head. "You told us to pull the markers because they made the fence look wrong." The realtor looked at Derek like he had just set fire to her commission. Then I placed Derek's email on the patio table, the one claiming I had verbally agreed to the line. I said, "I never agreed to this." I warned him it was 18 feet wrong before the first post went in. The contractor shifted. "He did say that," the contractor admitted. Derek turned on him. "What?" The contractor looked down. "He told you the line was wrong." I heard it. That was the second crack. The one Derek could not explain away. Then I placed the permit on the table. The same permit he had waved at me like a deed. Miss Alvarez looked it over. "This permit allows a fence," she said. "It does not certify ownership of the land beneath it." Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. Then I placed the listing page beside the email. Expanded private backyard with new 8-foot cedar privacy fence. The buyer picked it up. "This is why we made the offer," he said. Derek said, "It's marketing language." Miss Alvarez looked at him. "Then why does the marketing describe land outside your recorded boundary?" Nobody answered. So I did. Because he built a fence around property he did not own, then tried to sell the shape it created. The buyer looked at Derek, then at the fence, then at the orange stakes. "So the backyard we offered on," he said, "is not the backyard you own?" Derek did not answer. His realtor picked up the listing sheet and folded it in half. "We have to pull this listing," she said. "Now." That was the third crack. The loudest one. The sheriff looked at Derek. "Did you instruct the fence company to follow the line you marked?" Derek swallowed. "They asked where I wanted it. And you marked this line?" "I marked the line as I understood it," Mason said. "A survey was available in the county records." Derek snapped. "Not everyone checks ancient paperwork." I almost smiled. "There it is." The buyer looked at him. "What?" I said. "The sentence that costs people money." Melissa from the title company arrived before the inspection ended. She had the same careful voice in person that she had on the phone. She confirmed what I already knew. The house was not condemned. No one was being arrested for owning a bad fence. But the pending sale could not close cleanly. Not with an active boundary dispute. Not with an encroaching structure. Not with removed survey markers. Not with tree damage. And not with listing materials claiming land that did not belong to the seller. The title company would have to pause the closing. The buyer's lender could require updated documents. The fence had to be removed from my land. The damaged cedar trees needed valuation. The property line had to be restored. The listing had to be corrected. And any price based on an expanded backyard would have to be renegotiated. Derek turned red. "This is insane. It's just a strip of grass." Ms. Alvarez looked at the listing. "Then why did you use it to sell the house?" That line hit harder than anything I could have said. The buyer handed the listing back to his realtor. "I want this resolved before we move forward," he said. "And the price is not the same if that yard is not real." Derek turned to me. "You cost me a buyer." "No," I said. "I cost you the lie." The next few days were expensive for Derek. The fence company had to come back. Not to finish the job, to undo it. They removed every panel from my property. They pulled posts set in fresh concrete. They dug out the footings. They repaired the ground where their equipment had torn up my grass. Mason restaked the boundary with bright orange markers and metal pins. A tree appraiser came out to evaluate the cedar damage. 3 trees had been cut or damaged badly enough to require compensation and replacement. The irrigation line Derek had added along the false fence line had to be removed. His patio landscaping had to be revised. The listing came down for correction. The buyer demanded a price reduction. The title company required documentation that the encroachment had been removed. Derek also had to sign a written acknowledgement. It stated that the fence had been built on Porter property. It confirmed that the corrected listing no longer included the disputed strip. And it made clear that the permit had never established the boundary. His realtor made sure the title company received it. The numbers came out in pieces. $22,000 for the fence installation, removal, and disposal. $14,000 for landscaping and irrigation restoration. $9,500 for cedar damage, tree replacement, and soil restoration. $7,000 in survey, legal, and title-related fees. More than $18,000 in price reduction and concessions demanded by the buyer. Staging costs, inspection delays, contractor rescheduling fees. Every number came from the same mistake. Derek had priced my land into his profit. Now he had to price it back out. By the time it was done, Derek was staring at a loss of more than $80,000. All because he thought 18 feet of someone else's land would look good in listing photos. The day the fence came down, half the neighborhood found reasons to be outside. People watered flowers that did not need water, checked mailboxes that were already empty, walked dogs that looked confused by the sudden enthusiasm. Derek stood on his patio with his arms crossed. He looked smaller without the fence. The crew removed the cedar panels one at a time. Each panel lifted away revealed more of my yard, my grass, my cedar stumps, my line. When the last section came down, Mason drove the final orange stake into the ground. The sound of the hammer carried across both yards. Derek finally spoke. "You cost me $80,000 over 18 feet. I looked at the broken soil where my cedar trees had stood. No, I said. You spent $80,000 trying to pretend 18 feet was yours." He did not answer. There was nothing left for him to say. Sheriff Dalton handed him a copy of the updated incident report. It documented the removed markers, the fence encroachment, the cut trees, the contractor statement, the false verbal agreement claim, the permit issue, and the survey confirmation. The civil side would be handled through claims, insurance, title delays, and legal letters. But the public part was already over. Everyone had seen the stakes. Everyone had seen the fence come down. Everyone had heard what Derek had tried to sell. Derek never apologized, but he signed the acknowledgement. He paid for the survey. He paid toward the cedar replacement. His listing was corrected, and his closing documents no longer included 1 inch of my land. That was enough, because I did not need Derek to admit he was wrong. I only needed the record to show where the truth stood. A month later, the house sold, for less than Derek wanted. The listing no longer mentioned an expanded backyard. The photos were retaken. This time, the true property line was visible. My cedar trees were replaced with young ones. They looked too small at first. Everything new does. But they were planted on my side, where they belonged. A few neighbors came by afterward. Some apologized for believing Derek's emails. One man admitted he thought I was being stubborn over nothing. I told him the same thing my father would have told him. You don't have to like your neighbor, but you should respect the line. That fall, I put up a small sign near the back corner. Nothing dramatic. No threats. No big red letters. Just a simple metal sign mounted beside the new survey marker. Private property line recorded. Survey on file. Every time I walk past it, I think of my father. I think of him kneeling in that dirt, teaching me that a fence is only honest when it respects what is written down. Derek thought a fence could make a lie look finished. But survey stakes have a way of reminding everyone where the truth begins. So tell me, if your neighbor built a fence 18 feet inside your land, cut your trees, ripped out your survey stakes, lied that you agreed to it, waived a permit like it was a deed, and tried to sell your property as his expanded backyard, would you have torn the fence down yourself? Or would you have done what I did? Kept quiet, opened the file, called the sheriff, and let the survey stakes cost him $80,000.